Okay, let's dive right in. Imagine a student practicing for a final exam. If they're allowed to just, look at the actual exam questions beforehand, practice with those exact questions, and then constantly tweak their answers until they get a perfect score, well, what happens on test day? That exam doesn't measure their actual knowledge anymore. It literally just measures their ability to memorize a specific test. If you drop them into a real-world job relying on that supposed knowledge, they'd fail completely. Machine learning models face this exact same problem. It's a foundational concept in data science, and today, in this explainer, we're going to explore exactly how to prevent it so our models actually learn instead of just cheating.
So this brings us to the core question. Why do we obsessively separate machine learning datasets into training, validation, and test portions? Now, I know it might sound like dry, simple bookkeeping, but I promise you, it's the absolute bedrock of reliable AI. Our goal here is to build a highly practical mental model for these datasets. By the end of this, you'll be able to explain the central idea, follow the main workflow, and, maybe most importantly, recognize exactly where a model's final results might need a little extra caution.
What we're really trying to avoid here is a cardinal sin in data science. It's called data leakage. Basically, this is the unintended transfer of information across your training or evaluation boundaries. In plain English, it's when the algorithm accidentally peeks at the answer key. If information from your final test bleeds into the learning phase, the model is going to look artificially brilliant. So, by splitting our data into 3 distinct buckets, we're aggressively protecting our evaluation. We assign completely non-overlapping roles to learning, to making development decisions, and to our final assessment. Learning, tweaking, and grading, they absolutely must never mix. Let's break down those 3 buckets, starting with the heavy lifter, the training set. Strictly speaking, this is the data used to estimate model parameters. But what does that actually mean in practice? Well, this is the raw material that enters the algorithm and teaches it the underlying patterns. Going back to our student analogy for a second, this is the textbook. It's where the model spends hours, so to speak, studying the fundamental rules, looking at thousands of examples, and making its initial internal connections. Without a robust, high-quality training set, your model just doesn't have anything to learn from. Next up, we step into the tuning phase with the validation set. This is the data we use to compare development choices. You see, as a model is being built, developers have to make a ton of structural choices. These are technically called hyperparameters. Think of the validation set as the practice quizzes the student takes before the big exam. It essentially tells the developers, hey, the model is failing on this specific type of question, we need to adjust our approach. And it does this all without ever compromising the integrity of the final test data. It safely guides those critical choices. Finally, we reach the ultimate proving ground, the test set. This is the strictly held out data used only for final evaluation. It gives us an unvarnished, untainted estimate of exactly how the model will perform out in the wild on completely unseen cases. Keeping these 3 phases strictly segregated, that is the magic trick that turns an abstract, theoretical algorithm into a reliable system you can actually trust in the real world. The important distinction here isn't just the label we slap on the data. It's about what information enters the process, how it's structurally organized, and what uncompromised output comes back to tell you if the whole system actually works. Okay, let's see how this all builds into a complete mechanism. It works sequentially through 4 connected stages. Step 1 is train. You fit the model parameters using that training set. Step 2 is validate. You compare your candidate choices on the validation data, strictly without updating anything from the test set. Step 3 is test. You freeze the final pipeline and evaluate it exactly once on the held-out test set. And step 4, crucially, is monitor. You don't just deploy a model and walk away. You have to interpret those test results for your target population and continually monitor performance in the real world. Why? Because real-world data eventually shifts, and the real world is essentially one never-ending test set. Taken together, these stages form a continuous, highly vulnerable pipeline, and the path matters immensely. Assumptions, flawed measurement choices, and straight-up errors can sneak in at multiple stages along the way. This is exactly why you should always be skeptical of a flashy 99% accuracy score in a press release. If this pipeline wasn't strictly maintained, that score is literally meaningless. A truly responsible explanation of an AI model requires visibility into this entire connected process, from the very first piece of training data all the way to the final monitor, rather than just pointing to a shiny final output. Let's ground this abstract theory in a concrete real-world scenario. Imagine you're building an AI model to automatically route customer support tickets. Let's say you start with exactly 1,000 time-ordered service cases. We're using a relatively small, compact number here just so we can keep every transformation totally visible as we move through the pipeline. Now, these aren't just abstract rows in a spreadsheet. These are real interactions that actually happened, sequentially over time.
So how do we divide those 1,000 cases? You might be tempted to just pull cases at random, right? But a realistic split must mirror how the model will actually encounter the future. Time is almost always a factor. So you take the oldest historical block of cases and use them to train the model. Then you take a slightly more recent block of cases to tune the model. That's your validation set. Finally, you take the absolute newest, most current block of cases to test the frozen pipeline. This perfectly simulates the model predicting the future, which of course is exactly what you needed to do in production.
But wait, there is a crucial trap you have to watch out for. What happens if the exact same customer service ticket somehow crosses these boundaries? Say an impatient customer sent 2 identical emails. Well, if duplicate cases cross from your training set into your test set, you must remove or group them. Why? Because otherwise, the model is literally just recognizing a duplicate it already memorized during training. This creates massive data leakage. It leads to dangerously optimistic performance scores that will just instantly collapse once the model is deployed and faces truly unique tickets. So why does all this meticulous splitting and cleaning matter? Because you need a practical decision rule for your project. You must use separate datasets whenever model choices are being informed by performance results. You have to match the evaluation method to the question you're asking, the available data, and crucially, the cost of error. You don't just choose a splitting technique because it's popular or technically sophisticated. You have to stop and ask yourself, if this model fails in the real world because we evaluated it poorly, how much money, trust, or safety is that going to cost us?
Which brings us to a major, very common misconception in the industry. A lot of people treat a random 80-20 split of data as the lazy default gold standard for every single project. Just carve off 20% and call it a day, right? But a much more accurate professional view is that the split must actively reflect your deployment conditions. As we saw with our customer service example, designing your split around specific groups, timeframes, or geography is often absolutely necessary. Relying on simple random rows would secretly leak future information and completely ruin your evaluation.
Even with a flawless, time-based split, there's a systemic limitation we have to acknowledge. A single test set estimates performance only for data that is remarkably similar to its original sampling process. Furthermore, a test set is fragile. It can become contaminated through repeated use. Think about it. If you evaluate your model, don't like the score, and then go back to tweak the model based on that specific test performance, your test set has secretly just become a validation set. You've leaked the data yourself. This defines the exact conditions under which a result actually deserves confidence and when you absolutely need new, fresh data to verify your system.
Okay, let's pull all of this together into an essential recap of the what, how, and when. What is it? It's the use of dedicated sets, training data to estimate parameters, validation data to guide choices, and test data to provide a held-out estimate. How does it work? Sequentially through the train, validate, test, and monitor pipeline. And when does it matter? You must use carefully designed separate datasets whenever random rows would leak information, explicitly designing your splits to reflect actual real-world deployment.
By maintaining strict boundaries between these datasets, we ensure our models are actually learning the underlying rules of the game rather than just memorizing the final exam. So the next time you see a press release or a piece of software boasting absolutely flawless AI accuracy, ask yourself, what did their test set actually look like? And did they inadvertently cheat to get there? Thanks for joining this explainer. Keep questioning the data, and we'll catch you next time.